Welcome to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25 Media. We feature top founders, executives, and business leaders from all over the world.
Hello, listeners. Bela Musits here. I'm the host for this SpotOn podcast episode, where we feature top restaurateurs, investors, and business leaders. This is part of our SpotOn series. SpotOn has the best-in-class payment platform for retail, and they have a flagship product called SpotOn Restaurant, where they combine marketing, software, and payments all in one. They have served everyone from larger chains like Dairy Queen and Subway to small mom-and-pop restaurants. To learn more, go to SpotOn.com. This episode is brought to you by Rise 25. We help B2B businesses cultivate and reach their dream relationships and connect with more clients, get more referrals, and strategic partnerships to get your business return on investment through Done For You podcast. If you have a B2B business and want to build great relationships with clients, referral partners, and thought leaders in your space, there's no better way to do it than through podcast and content marketing. To learn more, go to rise25media.com or email us at support@rise25media.com. Today's guest on the show is Matthew Rosenberg. He is the CEO and founder of M-Rad, which is an architecture, development, and branding studio. They were recently named to the Forbes Small Giant list. And in addition, Inc. magazine has named him one of the top 10 designers every business should have on their radar. Welcome to the podcast, Matthew.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. Hey, so let me ask you a question. If you're at a non-work related social event, if there is such a thing, right? A non-work related social event, and after you get introduced to somebody and they say to you, "Very nice to meet you, Matthew. What do you do?" How do you answer that question?
That's a great question. I think after many years, I still don't have the answer to that. But I do tell them I start off with, I'm an architect and designer, and now very much an entrepreneur. I really love starting businesses.
Yeah, that's a great answer. That's a great answer. So tell us a little bit about M-Rad and what it does.
Sure. Yeah, M-Rad's started off as purely architecture and design about 12 years ago, and really started blending a lot of other aspects of real estate, architecture, design, and brought everything under all these verticals under one umbrella. So we started getting into interior design as well. We do ground up buildings, design anywhere from 275 square foot prefab mobile homes up to 1 million square foot biotech campus in San Francisco. Now we also do furniture design, customized products, and we also design fragrances for our spaces and brand them, market them. So it really becomes a fully integrated design house. Now we started operating some of our buildings and developments as well.
Oh, wow. That's a really broad spectrum of business endeavors all under one roof. Where is M-Rad located?
So our home base is in Los Angeles in Culver City. We do have a satellite studio in Mexico City now as well. And then we do have some employees around the world that have started in LA and now have, after the pandemic, really spread out, which has been really beneficial for us because they're extending the brand and the idea of M-Rad. And so we're starting to get some more projects internationally again as well.
Wow, that's great. So tell me a little bit about how you find customers.
It's all referral. So all of our business we've never really marketed too much. It's always been through my network and that growing network. I love that way because it's a very trusting way to build partnership. Where architects, if you take on a random client and then you have to work on a project for 4 years with someone that you don't know or your friends don't know, that's a very risky business for me. So for over 10 years, it's always been through referrals.
Yeah, excellent. Architecture always struck me as one of those areas where not only does what you're designing have to be functional, but it also needs to be beautiful. right? I mean, the design of a hammer hasn't changed in 100 years. Like it's functional and we don't think about beauty or anything like that or style. So how do you, as an architect and owner of this business, how do you sort of balance those? It's got to be functional, but at the same time, it has to look beautiful to your customer in particular.
Yeah, it's a great question, actually. I think there's a tremendous amount of value in the aesthetics of things, of how they feel, how they look, how they smell even. So a lot of our thesis is based around the five senses. And I think there's a tremendous amount of value that used to go missing and is now being incorporated into architecture and design a lot more. So if you look at a hammer, there's, maybe now if you're to redesign a hammer, you think about the texture of the handle, you think about how the handle connects to the rest of the function of the thing. And those things will change the way that you use that product, whether inherently it will change the way you feel it, touch it, use it, think about it, take care of it. And so when we design anything, whether it be a product or a building, there are elements, and it's a fine balance between designing purely aesthetically and for this beautiful piece of art, and realizing like there are elements of that artwork and that design and aesthetic that actually influence the way that we feel emotionally. And so we do put a lot of importance on that.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, there's almost sort of like an invisible element to this, right? There's certain things that pop out at you and hit you right away, but you were talking about sense before, right? And smell and how that can sort of impact your mood and stuff. So a lot of these things are, I characterize them as almost invisible. So they're not jumping out at you. How do you come up with some of those ideas?
I mean, my research really in terms of fragrance and the five senses started about 5 or 6 years ago. My sister took me to this random class in Chinatown, downtown LA. And this woman taught us how to mix essential oils and fragrances. And I became really infatuated with it and started mixing one. And it reminded me of my childhood, and then realized there's this deep connection between fragrance and memory. So started doing some research, and it really is, there's a lot of background to this where your memory sense is tied much tighter to fragrance. And so people connect place, memory, history, travel, all these things to fragrance. And so if we can start laying in 3 or 4 emotions and senses at the same time in our spaces and our design, we're actually able to transport people to these places that they remember. And that gives them a much richer connection to these new places that they might have not had. So really, when it comes to Fabel, the restaurant side, that's a thesis of the five senses, of tapping at least 4 senses at the same time. And you may not be able to say, this is how I feel, but when people come into the space and they talk about it, you realize that thesis is coming to life.
Yeah. Well, it's amazing that you said that, because the strongest part of my memory is the sense of smell and how it connects to where I was or the last time I smelled that scent, right? I can often see things, or I can see a person or I see a building and I can't place it. But if I have the scent, boy, it's amazing how my memory can sort of place that in context, where with other senses, at least for me, it's not as strong a connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So you mentioned Fabel. So tell us a little bit about Fabel.
Yeah. So Fabel's a restaurant that my team and I designed, and now I own and operate as well. We opened 4 months ago in Miami, and it's been a roller coaster, to say the least. It is a very different industry, the hospitality industry, than architecture. The speed is exponential to anything that happens in architecture and design, where the building takes 5 years from the time you conceptualize to build it, whereas a restaurant is continually evolving every single night and every single day, with hundreds of guests coming in every day. And so there's all these nuances that are adjusting that business. But it's been really exciting to see this idea of the five senses, being able to design every single aspect down to the knife, to the plateware, and the fragrance that gets injected into the space. So it's really been our first test of how do we take every single component of design, architecture, and operation and put it under one umbrella. And so far, it's going very well.
Yeah, so that's really neat. I mean, because you think about going to a restaurant and you think about, how the food tastes, but that's just one element of that experience. And restaurants always struck me as one of the few places where this, I'll use the word ambiance. I don't know if it's the right word or not, but sort of the look and feel and the smell is really, really important. And it's one where a lot of people go to. Everyone goes to restaurants, whereas, that also may be important in other types of experiences, going to an art museum or some other type of museum, but not everyone does that. But restaurants, everyone goes to. So it seems like it's a really important element of having a successful restaurant and getting people to feel good during that experience.
Yeah, there's an interesting balance between creating this incredible ambiance, which there's a lot of restaurants and establishments that do very well. But typically what happens is they'll focus on that, and then the food comes after.
Secondary.
And our goal is, how do we create this incredible cuisine that brings in experience of travel and other places around the world and allows it to sort of inject through Fabel, but make sure the service, the uniforms, the fashion, everything gets interwoven in the entire experience, where not one thing gets dropped off at any point. And so there's this beautiful balance between, it's almost like an orchestra or a performance every night, where we get to design the costumes. We have the performers come and interact with the guests, but at no time are they getting pulled away from, if the appetizers land on the table, they're described exactly what it took to create that hummus or that 4-day aged chicken. And those things are, when you combine all of those things together and the food tastes incredible in that very highly designed space, there's something that can't be taken away. And I think we're starting to prove that the importance of those things combining together is really what people are looking for now.
Yeah, super. So let's talk a little bit about sort of your entrepreneurial background and your entrepreneurial adventure. So before you started M-Rad, did you work in another industry or for another corporation?
Yeah, so I finished my master's in architecture at SciArc in downtown LA in 2009, which was basically the drop of the economy.
Right.
And everyone had just been laid off, especially in architecture. And so there were no jobs in the States or Canada, where I'm originally from. But I was getting offers in China, where all of the building was happening at the time. So decided to head to Beijing.
Wow.
Worked for a company there for about 6 months, designing some unbelievable projects that somehow also got built very quickly, which would only ever happen in China, I think. And then I tried to start a prefab company over there and learned a lot of lessons very quickly. But I got hooked on this idea of entrepreneurship and starting a company. I never worked very well for other people.
Yeah.
I like working very hard, but I never quite understood the idea of, all right, why am I working so hard when I don't fully believe in what they're doing and it doesn't seem efficient? And so came back to Los Angeles and decided I could look for a job, or I could look for clients. And looking for clients for me was much easier than looking for a job.
Oh, very nice. So talk a little bit about, the first 6 months to 9 months. I mean, you're looking for clients, you're trying to convince them to go with a brand new startup person, right? How was that experience?
Yeah, it's funny. I remember it quite well, actually. We were in our 500 square foot apartment here in Los Angeles, and I had all my screens and it was just me. And so I had to figure out how to create a company, essentially. And creating an architecture company from scratch is very difficult. Typically, what happens is someone will work for a company for 10 years. They'll build relationships and they'll take a couple of clients with them. And they have that going. I started it from scratch. I didn't have clients. I didn't have a track record. I really hadn't done much. So I had to start building out a portfolio of work, but a portfolio of renderings isn't very enticing for a developer wanting to build a big project. But I found a couple of people that trusted me to learn the process, to understand how the city and permitting works. And I worked very hard for them and started then trying to get some competitions. And then I started this is what I guess led me to the development side. I would seek out properties and do a zoning analysis and essentially see what we could build. And I would design a conceptual project on it. And I would share that with developers or agents around town and say, hey, guys, we should move forward with this. And so I basically did all the speculative work for free at the beginning in order to earn their trust. And then I really got excited about the development side. So that's how that sort of led into it, because I didn't really have much choice.
Yeah. Yeah. So at sort of what point in time did you, sit back and say to yourself, you know what, this is working, I'm going to make it here. And I know this thing is good. Because in the beginning, you got to have, every once in a while, you got to have some not so nice dreams at night or worries at night that says, I don't know if this is going to work or not.
I mean, I still never know if it's going to work or not, honestly. It's every day is a fun ride for sure. But I think, a couple of years in, I had a project being built, and then we really I think we had about 7 or 8 projects at that time already. I had probably 6 or 7 staff.
Yeah.
And so you sort of look, all right, now we need an office. I went and signed a big corner office that was way too big for us, but it was great visibility. And I got a great deal on it, ended up fixing it up, renting out part of it, and I made it work. And I think it was always just trying to almost level up and figure out, all right, how do we grow this business? Well, we can't grow it out of a 500 square foot apartment. We need some visibility. We need a showroom. And although I couldn't afford it, I figured out other startups needed space as well. And if we created a great environment for them, then we could bring them in. We could create basically a logo at one of the busiest intersections in LA. And that helped a lot. And it was always just looking for new ways to keep growing. But honestly, I don't know if I ever feel like it's always working. I feel like everything can always kind of fall apart, but that's the fun part.
Yeah. Yeah. So now Fable's sort of, at least the way I think about it, a really new, different experience, right? Yeah, I get the designing the building and the furniture and the ambiance and all that stuff, but now you've branched out into this preparing food, right? And there's a whole nother segment of that. So talk about that experience a little bit.
Yeah, it's interesting because I think the pandemic really launched a lot of new companies and allowed people to explore new ideas. And for me, I suppose it was a restaurant, and maybe it was leading up longer than I realized. We've designed restaurants, hotels. I love traveling. I love food, and I love dining. And so it was perhaps inevitable where I always look at the glass where I want to see how it smells and touches and how's the service. And there was a moment where I naively thought I could do it better, right? But it is such an intricate, nuanced business, which makes it very, very exciting. But when you go in every night and you have 500, 600, 700 guests, different people coming in and experiencing something that you've created that you think is perfect, if that exists, when they come from all these different places in the world and have all these different experiences and backgrounds, that is an almost impossible feat. But when you bring in enough elements from, I think, around the world where that's impacted me and our team and allow our team to inject who they are into this thing, it becomes a place of magic almost, where you don't need to cater to every single person's precise desire. You need to create an environment for them that they didn't even know they needed. And so there's a fine balance between making sure everyone's happy and making sure you're delivering a narrative that they know, okay, this is what I'm supposed to experience here. I think that's the balance and the potential for a very successful hospitality industry. And
yeah, super. Now, the restaurant business is one of those things that once you sort of figure out all these things you just talked about, you can sort of replicate that. Is that something that you're thinking about going forward?
Yeah, that was always a plan. And after opening this and realizing how fun and also difficult it is every single night, when you put so much energy into opening one, there's no way I would not open 10 of these things, because I've learned so much so quickly just opening one restaurant in Miami, that to not learn from that, extrapolate, fix, make better, and move that around the world and test that out and massage it. If we open in Lisbon's a very different market than Miami, and we need to make sure we understand the nuances of that market and how to adjust what we're creating just a little bit to make sure that it fits there as well. And so, the plan is to, New York, Lisbon, Italy, maybe Saint-Tropez, but we'd like to open about 10 of these in the next 4 to 5 years is the plan.
Oh, very nice. Very nice. Well, that's got to be exciting. As you were saying that, I remembered this story I heard about Disney. And when Disney was getting ready to open Disneyland Tokyo, Disney Corporation wanted to tailor it to the Tokyo audience, right? They wanted to have all these things that were sort of embraced the Japanese culture. And the folks in Japan kept saying, no. We want it exactly like the one in Anaheim. Don't change a thing. That's what we want. So it is interesting that, if there's a certain brand identity that once you get to a point, then tweaking it here and there, you got to be a little bit careful about that. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, I come from a branding world. Like we've also been hired to brand, design, ideate tech companies, fashion companies. I don't promote that really through our offerings, but we do it a lot through our network. And so that idea of a strong brand recognition and ethos is one of the most important things that any company, whether it be architecture, design, restaurants, that it starts from there. And if there's any missing gap or any missing piece, I promise you that business at some point will fail, and they'll need to figure that out, because unless there's a very strong, adamant brand, no one will attach onto it. Or some people will for a while, but then a string gets pulled and the whole thing falls apart. So yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's pillars to what we are doing at Fabel that will never change. But then you have to look at, all right, the market in Lisbon is now very European. There is some international money and investors coming in. We want to know who they are and make sure that that market is there to experience Fabel. If I didn't believe that, and Fabel's not the cheapest restaurant you'll go to, but it's an experience, it's theatrical. And so you are paying for it, but that clientele is not everywhere. And so we need to make sure that clientele is there, that we can deliver that to them. And that if there's a certain local cuisine or fish, we want to make sure we're still tying to the local farmers and markets, and that there is that story between supporting local business still and not just shipping something in from Tokyo because that's the best fish you can get. Right. We do want to support local businesses. Like we have partnerships with farms where if we can't get that certain vegetable, we'll change a dish that week.
Yeah. That's a great way of thinking about those things. So one of the things I think entrepreneurs often struggle with is hiring and what the hiring process is. Because hiring someone that doesn't work out and in 4 to 6 months, you got to let them go or they leave, that's really, really expensive. Do you have any thoughts on hiring and what you've learned from that?
Yeah, I really learned a lot early on with M-Rad. And it's tough to convince talent to come into a startup architecture firm. Yeah. Harder than coming into a restaurant for sure. But I got some, I learned a lot in terms of, okay, these people are willing to do this, but maybe they don't have as much experience. And so you have to deal with that. My goal has always been to train younger people, because I had clients who gave me a chance to learn. And so I always wanted to pass that down and give, if these people wanted to start an architecture firm, I want to give them as much information and training and knowledge that I learned to save them 5 years of doing that. And so I've always worked very hard to try to keep employees, keep them happy, keep them well paid and taken care of, as much vacation as they need. And those kind of small tweaks to employment, I think, are a big thing, especially in architecture, where architects are underpaid across the entire industry. And my goal was always how to figure out how to pay them a bit more than even Gensler, the big names, which was very odd for a startup, because startups typically will not in terms at all. They pay very low wages, almost where you can't afford to live. And I just wanted to change that whole model because I didn't believe that that was the solution to the architecture industry. And that was a big thing for me. And I brought a lot of that into Fabel in terms of just sharing who I am, connecting with all the staff. It's a big staff at Fabel. We have, I think, 75 people on payroll and then a bunch of other people on the side. And I wanted to share with them that I wasn't coming into this industry just to have fun and go out at night. I wanted to change their industry because there's a lot of similar almost angst and anger about their industry that I saw in architecture for many years. And so I saw this hole where maybe we can rethink how much we're paying them. Maybe you pay them a couple extra dollars an hour. I mean, most of them work for tips, but give them parking, give them phone reimbursement, pay for health insurance to a server. There's just these small things that, yes, are expensive, but they pay off tenfold. To your point, hiring and firing is one of the most expensive things a company will ever see. And so my goal is to avoid that as much as possible.
Yeah. Are there particular attributes that you look for in a prospective hire to make sure that it fits within the culture that you're trying to develop?
Honestly, I don't. I like to speak to everyone, and I typically know within the first 30 seconds. Yeah. I trust my gut on that stuff a lot, and I can usually connect with people very quickly and understand who's real, who's not, their true experience, why they're here. I usually try to trust the gut on that as much as possible.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you met someone and they're saying, gee, I'm thinking I'm leaving this firm I'm with, let's say it's an architectural firm, or they're working a restaurant, and they say, I'm thinking of leaving and I want to start my own. What sort of words of advice or lessons learned would you share with them?
Don't do it. I'm kidding. I would, and they're two very different businesses for sure. So I think on the architecture side, I would suggest that they work for another company for as long as they can. The way I did it is a little stubborn, honestly, and it's quite tumultuous and very, very risky. And there's other ways to do it that are smarter. But I would just say make sure that they have a network and relationships that they can trust, that they can reach out to, and find advisors along the way, no matter what business you're starting.
Yeah, excellent advice. So how can listeners find out more about M-Rad and Fabel?
Sure. M-Rad's website is www.m-rad.com. We're also on Instagram, mrad.inc. Fabel is Fabel Miami.com, and Fabel Miami on Instagram. It's spelt a little different, the French way, Fabel. So yeah, you can find us there, and we'd love to have anyone into the restaurant whenever you're in Miami.
Yeah, sure. We will make sure that information is in the show notes so people can find you. One last question. Is there something that I've not asked you that you would like to share with our listeners?
I think those are great questions, honestly. I usually have more to say, but I really appreciated the conversation.
Oh, well, great. Well, thank you very, very much. Hey, one other thing, we're sort of big fans of acknowledging the people who've been impactful or influential to us. Is there anyone in the industry or anyone else in your past that you'd like to give a shout out to?
Yeah, my wife is obviously extremely supportive in my crazy visions and ideas, but I've had some close friends that have just supported me, made sure that I had a network that could support my ideas as well. And without that tight network, there's no way that anybody could really start a business, I think. So keep your friends close and make sure you take care of each other.
Yeah, that's great advice. Great advice. Really very true. Hey, Matthew, thank you so much for being on the show. You've been a wonderful guest. I've really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you so much for your time.
You betcha.
Thanks for listening to the Top Business Leaders Show, powered by Rise 25. Visit rise25.com to check out more episodes of the show and to learn more about how you can start your own podcast.